Okay, so to do that, we are now going to start working our color stranding chart using the stranding technique. And so this is the version of the chart over here on the right that I'm using. And you can see it's matching up pretty well here. The chart represents actually one repeat of the pattern. And so on this particular pattern, a repeat is from here to here. You can see I'm creating that little pointed upward V part. So here's one repeat and two repeats and so forth all the way around. I think, can't remember exactly how many stitches I have on this cowl, but I think there are probably 8 repeats going around here. And so that means I'd be working this color chart 8 times. Now, when you're working with color charts, you're typically in stranding, you're typically working round. You can do them flat, but it's a lot more difficult to strand on the purl side. So we're typically working round on the knit side only. And color charts are read then as if we're working round, we're always reading from right to left and bottom to top. And so in this particular pattern, you'll work so many rounds of ribbing, which I have here, and then we immediately start the color work part. And so in this chart, the colors correspond actually to the colors of what you're knitting. And so we see lights and darks. And in this chart, round 1, they're numbered from 1 all the way up to 20. Round 1 is simply knitting all the way around with your darker color. And so that's what you see here. You see a round of the dark blue. So I knit, 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 knit. When I hit the end of the chart, I just keep going for those 8 repeats. Then the very next round, you can see, is where I add in my lighter color. And you just do that just as we would add in any other color. I just simply leave a little tail and start knitting with it. So round 2, we see we knit with a dark strand, then 3 light contrast stitches, 1 dark, 3 light, 1 dark, 3 light, 1 dark, 3 light. Then we go back to the beginning, 1 dark, 3 light, and so on and so forth, all the way around. Round 3, it's another dark round. You just simply drop the light contrast strand and knit all the way around with the dark one. Round 4, we have 2 dark, 6 light, 1 dark, 6 light, 1 dark. Back to the beginning, 2 dark. Don't forget, you'll have 3 darks in a row there because you have 1 at the end, 2 at the beginning. So 2 dark, 6 light, 1 dark, 6 light, 1 dark, 2 dark, and so forth all the way around. Again, each of the color rounds in this pattern is separated by a plain round, which makes it kind of relaxing because we only have to really worry about the color every other row. So on this particular sample here, I'm already up to row 14 in the chart. And so you can see it's a 1 dark, 1 light, 1 dark, 1 light, 3 dark, 1 light, 1 dark, 1 light, 3 dark, 1 light, 1 dark, 1 light, and so on. And I just keep, again, reading that row till I get all the way back around to my marker. I'm kind of midway through this little repeat here. My marker is back here. So I'm just going to keep working that till I get back to my marker. Okay, so here's how you do it. To make it so that your contrast, which is, we want it to be our dominant color, and it's the lighter variegated here, we want that to pop. And so to make that happen, just there's kind of one rule of thumb. You keep your dominant color on the left-hand side and your background on the right. And I like to physically place the 2 yarns where they're supposed to be, and I try to keep them there. So dark background on the right, poppy contrast on the left. And we're going to keep them in those positions as we knit. Now there's various ways to strand. Some people hold both colors in one hand or the other. Some people, like me, We'll hold one color in one hand and one color in the other. And the way I'm going to teach it is we're going to start by just picking up one color, dropping it, picking up the other color, dropping it, keeping the orientation of our yarns on the left. What that does is the one on the left will always be stranding underneath or lying underneath the one on the right as you knit. And that keeps it closer to the front of the work, and you will find that whatever is on the left will tend to pop out more than whatever is on the right. And so here's how it looks. So for row 14, we're one dark, one light, one dark, one light. Let's just start with that. So we have one dark. We're going to pick up our dark strand, which is lying on the right, and knit one stitch. Then we have one light. And I like to not wind them. When I'm knitting this technique, I don't wind them through my hands so I don't have to keep winding and unwinding as I switch colors. I simply go and see how we're stranding that underneath the dark color. We're going to go ahead and knit that lighter color. Then we're going to drop that, keeping it on the left, pick up the darker color, knit a dark, drop it, keeping it on the right, pick up the light color and knit a light. So there's a dark, light, dark, light. Now you can see we have 3 darks. So again, keeping it on the right, we're going to knit 3 darks. 1, 2, 3. Now we're ready for one light. And you can see now that here's our 3 darks and our light strand is all the way down here. So we're going to have to strand that up in order to knit with it. And the important thing in this, it's called floating. So that white yarn has to float across those 3 dark stitches in order to be able to knit it. Now, if we were to knit too tightly and we pull that really tight, you would see that your yarn or your piece on the front would start to really pucker because we're knitting too tight. We're floating that across too tight. So we always have to make sure that when we're stranding, that we're stranding loose enough, not too loose, because then you'll be catching it every time you put it on, but not too tight so that your piece doesn't pucker and make the color work all distorted. So when we go to knit that light strand, we're going to knit it, and what I like to do is kind of stretch the piece out a little bit on the right hand needle so that it has to travel over a little close or further distance. Again, keeping that back on the right, and you can see now that that white strand just floats across the blue strands, not tightly, but not too loose, just in a really nice way. And so there's our one light. Excuse me, I'm kind of sliding around here. And so now you can see we have a dark and a light again. You don't have to worry about the floats so much on just a single color change. It's when you get across multiple stitches. So here's a dark, keeping it on the right, and a light. And now you can see again we have 3 more darks. So it's the same kind of concept. Dark, 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 and then spreading that out a little on the right hand needle, we're going to pick up our light and strand it up, making sure not to pull too tightly and that it's floating across really nicely, not too tight, not too loose. And now we'll finish off with a light, dark light. So we already did the light. Here's the dark and the light. Again, keeping the yarns in their respective positions. And that finishes the one repeat. And so to continue on then, we would simply go back to the beginning of row 14, and again we would have dark, light, and so we would just again pick up our dark, knit with it, light, knit with it, and so forth, making sure that when we have to float across multiple stitches, We're not floating too loosely or too tightly. And so that's basically how you color strand using the English throwing technique. So again, it's important to keep your yarns in the right orientation, and that way you won't have problems with your yarns twisting or anything like that. Just make sure you're picking them up from the right orientation and all will go well. Now, for those of you that may be continental knitters, in the next video, I'm going to demo how you do that by holding one yarn in your left hand and one yarn in your right hand.